Now, as we have separated the grains from stalk, the next problem that arises is how to separate grain from husk. So before I provide answer to this question, can you tell me what is husk? And what is the difference between husk, bran and chaff? Well, to understand these terms, let's have a magnified view of a rice grain. Now in this image, husk and bran, they are the outer coverings of the grain. And generally, both these terms, that is husk and bran, they're considered to be the same. But students, they are different from each other. And they're different in context of their nutritive value. So what exactly husk is? Well, husk is the hard protective outer covering of the grain that surrounds the cereal such as rice, wheat or barley. And it is indigestible to humans. And that's the reason it needs to be removed from the grain. Now, bran is also the protective outer covering of a grain, but then it is good source of vitamins such as vitamin B, vitamin C and vitamin E. Besides this, it is also rich in dietary fibers which are beneficial for human health, and that's because they boost our immune system and helps in preventing heart diseases. Now, when the husk is removed from the grain of a cereal, then it is known as chaff. So we can say the separated husk is known as chaff. And it is of no use to human beings as it is indigestible to them. But then it's not a total waste. And that's because it can be used as livestock fodder. And what is livestock fodder? It is nothing but the food for cattle. So understood all these terms? Now let's come back to the question which I had asked you a few moments back. That is how the grain is separated from the husk. So students, milling is the process which is responsible for separation or removal of husk or bran from the grain. Or we can say even both of them, both the husk and bran. And it was traditionally being done by hand pounding technique, wherein implements such as mortar and pestle and chakki were being used, which helps in separating husk from grain. And students, here I want to tell you that this hand pounding method is still being used quite commonly in many villages and other places. But nowadays, modern milling of cereals is being done by using machines, and more about such machines which are involved in this process, you'll be studying in your higher classes. Now, after traditional milling of rice or wheat is done, grains still remained mixed with chaff. And now the question arises that how do you separate chaff from grain, where chaff is nothing but the separated husk. So remember, chaff is nothing but separated husk. Well, to find answers to this question, let's take the mixture of rice and chaff. And to separate chaff from this mixture, we have to first look out for the difference between them, as on what basis we can separate the two components of this mixture. So chaff is lighter in nature than rice, and this can be verified by putting this mixture in a beaker of water. So here you can see that rice, the grain, which is the grain, it settles down at the bottom of the beaker, while chaff, which is lighter in nature, it floats on the surface of water. So what does this prove? So this proves that chaff is lighter than the grain, and this property is used to separate grain from the chaff. Now what will happen if I just blow air over this mixture of rice and chaff? So let me take this mixture in my hand, and now I'm going to blow air over it. Just observe carefully what happens. So here you can see that chaff being light in weight, it flies away. Can we do it once again? Okay. So you see, chaff, it flies away while I still have rice grain in my hand. And why does something that is lighter in nature, it gets blown away more? So this is a small homework which you all have to do, and I'll provide you with the answer to this later. So coming back to our question, as how do we separate chaff from grain? What are we going to do? We just simply put the mixture of grain and chaff on a plate or on a soup. Now, students who often visit their village during their vacations, they all would be quite familiar with this thing which is called soup. So soup is made up of cylindrical stems of a grassy family plant. It is broader at its one end while it is narrower at its other end. And it is widely used in villages for separating rice or wheat from the chaff. Now normally this process is performed on a windy day. The mixture containing rice and chaff, it is held at the shoulder height or at some particular height above the ground. Now as the mixture is allowed to drop down slowly, you will observe that both rice as well as chaff, they get pushed away by the wind. But the chaff particles, being lighter in weight, they fly away to a farther distance, while the rice, it gets separated from chaff and it forms a heap near the platform where the person is standing. And if there is no wind on that particular day, then a winnowing fan is used to create a sufficiently strong air blast. So here we can see that we have the edible part, that is rice, and there at some distance farther away we have separated chaff, which can be used for many purposes such as fodder for cattle. Now this method of separation is known as winnowing. And what do we understand by the term winnowing? Well, the general meaning of winnowing is to remove, be it people or things, from a group until only the best ones are left. So even in agricultural practice, farmer does the same thing, that is, separates or removes the undesired things such as chaff from the mixture of grain and chaff until the desired things, that is rice, wheat or barley, they are left. Thus, winnowing is the method by which heavier and lighter components of a mixture are separated by wind or by blowing air. Now with this, I end this module and we will meet again with many more interesting methods of separation.